All right, everybody, welcome to Unsheathed at RainFurrest 2015. We're delighted that you've come out to join us on this Saturday night, is it?
It's Saturday, yes.
It is Saturday.
Well done.
All right. I successfully calendared. Thank you all for coming. We're delighted to have this audience of thousands and thousands of people here in front of us.
I can't see the end of it back there.
So allow me to introduce myself and our panelists, my co-host and our guest, I guess. I'm not sure what the correct terms are anymore. I'm Kyell Gold. Hi, I've been doing this podcast for a number of years now, and RainFurrest was the first place that we did this podcast. That we did it live, I should say. We'd been doing it sort of in our secret mountain bunker for a few weeks. And we contacted RainFurrest and said, hey, can we talk in front of microphones in front of an audience of people at your convention? And they said, sure, that sounds like fun. Little did they know. RainFurrest is also where the legendary bucket of wine originated, for those of you familiar with the podcast.
And the later rehab clinic.
No, the rehab clinic was a different convention. We don't talk about that one. I'm delighted to be back here at RainFurrest. I'm delighted that all you guys are here, and delighted to be here with my esteemed, lovely co-host.
Not Tube.
No, not Tube.
Hi, I'm not Tube. I'm here because...
It gets funnier every time you say it.
For me, it does.
Go ahead.
Awkward silence. No,
it doesn't work on a podcast so well.
It doesn't, no. I'm Ryan Campbell, a.k.a. Not Tube, just because I don't like that nickname anymore, and please stop calling me it.
Which nickname, Ryan Campbell?
No, not Tube.
Oh.
I mean Tube. Stop confusing me, Fox.
I don't know. You're a dragon. I don't think I have to do that much work.
Yeah, but when it was Tube, I was a otter, and it didn't work out.
Yeah, that's right.
Otters
but now you do work out, obviously.
Plainly, yes. Mm-hmm. Check them out, yo. No. All right, I'm too embarrassed to continue now.
This is the first time Unsheathed has had a gun show. Anyway, we have another esteemed guest with us today, first time on the podcast. I will allow him to introduce himself.
I am Whyte Yote, and I also work out, but I'm sitting on that. I've written a bunch of things, Heat and Fang and Roar, and I don't know, 20 other some odd books that I can't even keep track of. And very happy to be here. I'm the virgin to the podcast.
Woo!
And thank you for graciously inviting
me. Not after
tonight. We have our virgin sacrifice now.
So the way we often do this is we just start talking about what we've been doing at this convention so far. So, like, at least you have a story in a thing that's coming out here, right?
Two stories. I got Will of the Alpha 2, BDSM Anthology, and Dungeon Grind, which is pretty much how it sounds.
Okay.
Both adult books, both from Fur Planet, and they've both been selling pretty well from what I hear.
Cool. Ryan is actually outdoing me at this convention by having 2 books released at the convention to my 1. So I will let him talk about his 2 books, and then I will talk about my 1.
Yeah, so generally it's like not advisable from a marketing standpoint to release 2 books at the same time, because you can really only engender so much enthusiasm for one at a time. But Koa of the Drowned Kingdom sold out today, so tomorrow I can focus on Forest Gods. Koa is it's just a novella, but I'm happy with it. I really like the world that it's set in. I'm planning to write more books in that world, probably novel length, because we writers tend to do that. They get longer and longer until someone says, no, stop that. Like, no one ever did that for J.K. Rowling. No one ever did it for George R.R. Martin.
I should add the caveat. I think that people did do that, but not past a certain point in their careers.
Right.
Stephen King also.
No, so once you start making enough money selling your books, the people who are saying, maybe this is a little bit too long, like they just get quieter and quieter and quieter because they're drowned out by the sound of money falling into a bank. So that's my goal. Please put money into my bank, and I will continue writing longer books. Koa the Drowned Kingdom is little novella set in a giant mangrove swamp in roughly Indonesia, part of the world, imaginary world with magic. And Forest Gods is the sequel to God of Clay. I'm writing God of Fire right now, and I love this series. It's gonna break my heart when I can't write in it anymore. But yeah.
I'm going to tell you a secret. Because I'm speaking as someone who is ending 2 series within 2 months of each other next year. You don't have to stop writing in them. I'm just putting that. I know right now you feel like you're coasting down a hill and that there's going to be this like level ground at the bottom and you're going to lose momentum. But
I've been thinking about it, and the problem is the way that the next book will end. It's going to be really, really hard. It'd be like, remember when Douglas Adams wrote Mostly Harmless, and he was just like, the universe is over now. Like, So none of you can pester me to write another book in this universe anymore. It's a little bit like that, except that I want to keep writing in it.
But you have so many rich side characters in there that you could totally write a book about some of the other gods you introduce or about some of the other cultures.
Adanko is very popular, even though his book just came out today. He's still very popular. And
you've introduced enough history that you could write a book about some of the historical things that happened. And I mean, that's all I'm saying is you can feel sad.
This is what he's doing to my arm right now.
And yeah, I say that as someone who as I said, is in January of next year, the 5th book in the Out of Position series, which will conclude that story arc, will be released. And that is not the end of the stories in that world with those characters.
It's just tough because they die in a blink. Oh, I wasn't supposed to say that, was I?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just because you're in my writing group doesn't mean you can spoil my books for everyone. It's okay because
everyone's so quiet because they're scared I was telling the truth.
Just don't tell them that their kid survives. That's all.
Someone asked me last night for it was Kits actually. He asked me for a offensive term for impreg, and I suggested reproduction. Like,
oh my God, that's terrible. Don't ever say that again.
What, reproduction?
Typity.
Okay, so that's cool. So my one little book that came out this convention is called Losing My Religion. It is a novella about a bisexual coyote who plays guitar in an REM cover band, who are out on tour playing a bunch of dinky little clubs, and he is trying to cope with the new configuration of relationships in the band, which include his best friend being married to the lead singer and their bassist having gone and been replaced by this new guy he doesn't know much about and who doesn't seem to know much about anything else. So there's like, somebody asked me, do you have to know all the works of REM in order to appreciate this book? No, I mean, it helps. It gives it a little more depth. It gives you, because I toss stuff in there, like certain songs at certain times are significant. All the chapter headings are REM song titles. The font of the book was partially designed by Michael Stipe.
That's so cool,
the font
by the
of
way.
the chapter headings is
really cool.
which I was in love
No
with.
one will notice it but the disciples.
That's not what REM fans are called.
Yes, it is.
Is it?
No, yes, this is a real thing. Yes, they call themselves disciples.
That's terrible. Anyway,
did I say too much?
You haven't said enough. See, if you knew REM songs, you got that joke.
Here's me in the corner.
One of the people out here is in the spotlight.
So anyway, it's the cupcakes have been a lot of fun. Koa is actually the 10th cupcake in that line. Losing My Religion is the 9th by virtue of the fact that its release party was 2 days earlier. And
Yeah, I won.
And I don't even know how to respond to that. The cupcakes, I think we've all won in a sense.
It's true. It's a super cool brand, and I'm super grateful that you guys let me contribute to it.
It was. I thank you for writing such a cool story that forms a good part of it. We'll just be patting ourselves on the back for a little while here. But I like them because we'd started out when we founded them saying there needs to be a venue for novellas, for basically 30 to 40,000 word stories, because there weren't any publishers at the time who were accepting that. Fur Planet, it turned out, was specifically looking for shorter books that they could sell for a lower price point, so that people didn't have to come up and plop down $20 for a novel or $20 for a big, thick anthology, because some people just wanted a shorter thing. And so when we talked to them and said, hey, we were thinking about writing these shorter novellas, they said, great.
And it's the cool thing is we're ahead of the curve, because novellas are just now starting to gain steam in mainstream science fiction and
They
fantasy.
are. Tor just announced a line of novellas
Yeah.
like this past year or last year or something.
I think they looked at what we were doing. We're like, ooh.
I think so. But from a personal standpoint, the cupcakes have been neat because they've allowed me to kind of explore stories and worlds and things that I wouldn't be able to do in the span of a novel. And I can do really quick things that are a little more complex, a little more in-depth than short stories. People have time to get to know the characters, to fall in love with them, whereas in short stories, the characters tend to come and go, and then they're gone. And so they've been fun little things where I'll just have an idea and I'll start writing, and I'll be like, this feels like it's going to be about 40,000 words, and then
But I like
6
novellas
months
because
later it's a published book, which is sort of,
like the narrative length is about the same as a movie. Like
Yeah.
people go, movies are short stories. And I'm like, no, short stories are like, you can't make a whole movie out of a short story unless you pad it out a bunch. But novellas, like, it's about that. We've all grown up with movies, right? So we're familiar with that sort of duration of story and like how long a plot arc takes to resolve. And so novellas are kind of natural for our generation and for the upcoming generations too, I think. So
It kind of
it's cool.
satisfies that need to binge without, risking your health or sleep or something like that. Like you could easily read 40,000 in one sitting, and a novel would be a stretch for me, but I know there's people who can do it. But it seems like it's in a really sweet spot if you can make the story wrap up in that kind of length.
yeah.
No, true story. I plotted out Koa the Drowned Kingdom on one night when I couldn't go to sleep. It was after a writing group one night, and I just couldn't go to sleep. And like every single plot point just started occurring, and I really, really wanted to get up and just start like writing in this like creative fever, but I couldn't because I was too sleepy. But it stuck with me, and I'm really happy with that story. I wrote it to.
We won't
be structured the same as a movie, and yeah.
Okay, so whenever we need you to write another novella, we'll just like trick you into eating chocolate-covered espresso beans again for an entire evening.
The trouble is, like, about half the time that works, and the other half the time is like, oh, my friends hate me, and I was secretly embarrassing just then.
I know you, Whyte Yote, have done. Generally, your stock in trade is short stories. Have you gone past like the 10 to 12,000 word limit often, and how does that usually work for you?
Well, as it happens right now, I'm proofing a 53,000 word. It was a commission, actually. Someone commissioned me to write it, and it wasn't supposed to be that long, but it just, once people pay me a certain amount of money, it's kind of like, I'll write this until it naturally wraps up, and it wrapped up in 53,000. I don't think it would be publishable in terms of what a novella is supposed to be, because it's one long string of story, and there's a cast of 8 or 9 characters, and then there's a sex scene, story, and scene. It's basically a string of scenes, but at least I've got that big piece under my belt to kind of prepare me.
So it could be a Richard Linklater movie.
A
few people got that.
But no, like, when you say not publishable, you mean mainstream, because mainstream's still just doesn't have that space for novellas, but the
Well, they
fandom
do.
does, and you guys are awesome. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Because I really like that length of story. It feels very natural to me. Like, if I want to tell a simple story, novella length, like 40 to 50,000 words is about right. And so you guys apparently like that length. You buy it, and it's really cool. I really enjoy telling stories around that length. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
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 Easier on the wallet, easier on the time budget. Like you can read a novella in an evening and not feel gypped. Like you get a complete story. So
And it's easier on our time budget as writers too than novels. Like how long did it take you to do Forest Gods?
Forest Gods took about 5 months to write and about 14 months to edit.
And by comparison, Koa.
Koa took a month and a half to write and about 20 days to edit.
Right. So, and it's a comparison. What's the? I'm just going to keep asking you questions here. What's the length of Forest Gods? How many words is it?
A little over 150,000, I think.
Wow. Okay. It is a mighty book.
Yeah, I'm amazed at how like heavy it is every time I pick it up. Like, oof. That seemed to have like it was more that was kind of after it, but it didn't. So.
But yeah, the novellas have been really cool. It's cool that you guys love them, and we enjoy writing them. So
Yeah.
you should write more novellas, even if they don't come to the Cupcake line. Fur Planet will publish them. They published Goddess as a standalone that's not a cupcake. They've published a couple other novellas, so they'll totally do that format.
I'm working on an anthology for them right now, slowly, and then the next obvious step from that is a novella, a standalone one, and then from there, I mean, you won't let me off the hook, so I'm going to write a novel at some point.
It is true, and you guys are all witness to this now, because I've been bugging him for a while to write a novel, and he has agreed to it before, but now he's agreed to it on a recording in front of witnesses.
I will come
the
to your
police can
studio
arrest you if you
and clip
don't.
that out of your no.
We'll take you to court.
God damn it. I was going to say also that I don't know if this is just me, but it's surprising the amount of shorter stories, 10 or 12,000 words that you can easily extend to 40 just by, I don't know, introducing a couple other characters or
Well,
expanding
every
on.
character that you introduce increases the length of a story by an order of magnitude. So, yeah, it's that's a risky thing there to introduce another character, because then they have to have a relationship with every other character in the story. They have to have a relationship with the plot. It's
But yeah, if you want to turn a 5,000 word story into a 40,000 word story, then yeah.
Well, that's what
Drop
happened
another
with
two characters in
But
or
that's what happened
something.
with Forest Gods, is I introduced a new POV character who is Cloud, and if she were not in there, the book would have been 100,000 words instead of 150. So yeah.
So okay, so that seems you have more to say about novellas or about.
Oh yeah,
things in general?
it's like you finish a story and there's just so much more there that you could put in there. It works fine as it is at that length, but there's a lot of other things that your brain won't stop telling you other things about this universe that never happens in the story. Things you might want to bring up, and they may or may not be important to the current story, but you can always, if you wanted to, you can come back and expand it. So maybe the main story was just one scene in a longer story.
Yeah, which is what happens when you do things like write a single short story that turns into a 5-novel series.
That was really dumb. I
I
don't
know
why.
that's super dumb. No one should ever do that. So, how have your guys' conventions been?
It's been cool. Like, it's been really chill. Like, mostly I just hang around in the bar and wait for people to walk by.
Recognize you, Mr. Famous Author with 2 books being released.
No one does that. Please recognize me, please. But no, it's okay because I'm an introvert, so I just sit there and do things on my computer. And
So you're happier when no one recognizes you.
Either way is good.
Okay. All right.
One way means money, other way means peace. Money, peace. Like this is
If only we could have both.
a piece of money.
How about yours?
It's been just as much of a blast as all the rest of the RainFurrests. I basically came on a whim the first time 4 years ago, and I didn't know how big of a writers' con it was.
Oh,
and
it's
then
so good for writers.
all of a sudden,
Yeah.
there's like 8 or 10 or 13 people in the room, and we're all talking about the thing that we all love to do, and it's like that whole sense of camaraderie, et cetera. And you know, FC is good because it's close. BLFC is cool because it's, you know, Reno. But this is like
That's the first time that
I was
sentence
just
has
going
ever
to say, I
been-
don't know if anyone's ever said cool because it's Reno before.
and then
But
this one
yeah.
is a different
BLFC,
thing.
parenthetically, BLFC is cool because the con staff do an amazing job of putting on a convention and really like committing 100% to the theme.
Especially last time, I loved it. I loved so much. That's the first time I'd ever actually seen an employment of the theme, and since I've been doing con since '04, and I guess that's saying something. They paid attention to it and they actually made it work instead of half-assing it, basically.
I have a deep fondness for this this particular con. Give it up for RainFurrest, you guys. They're amazing. Yeah.
So I know, was it last year you did panels for the first time?
I think I've been doing it for a few years now,
Is it-
but
Yeah,
is
I've been
2
on
years?
a panel with you before.
I think so. But I think the first panels that I did were here at RainFurrest.
Yeah, I was going to say it was either 1 or 2 years ago, I think.
I used to not go out for panels at FC because you intimidated me.
I feel bad about
and
that
then-
now.
But no, it was just you being that was you being you and me being this other version of me that hadn't just written enough or hadn't lived enough, and then I took a chance on the panels here, and I'm like, ooh, this is cool. And then I did the panels with you last year, and I learned not to self-deprecate for fear of bodily harm. I got over that really quick, and now I have 4 panels at one con, 3 panels and 1 invitation, and it's like, bring it on. It seems pretty normal now, and it's nice
cool.
that I can hold my own compared to when I
Absolutely.
started. But
Yeah, I've had a pretty good RainFurrest. I've done a few panels. I did a reading. I launched a book.
How is it doing? How is Losing My Religion doing? I know, like, they sold like 6 bazillion at the...
it was a major hit like 25 years ago, but haven't gotten tired of that one yet. I think they are. I tried to kind of surreptitiously look to see how big their stack was at the end of the day, and I couldn't quite see. I want to say they're down to like 15 or 20 or something like that, and they brought 75, so that's a pretty good weekend of sales.
That's very
It's a
decent.
fun story, too. Like,
Thank you.
I relate to it in a lot of ways.
I was actually really impressed that when the writing group, not two was part of my writing group, but when they critiqued the story, I was kind of like, basically it's this funny story with a lot of sex in it about this coyote and he plays in a band that all they do is cover REM songs, which you're sort of like, when are you ever going to succeed, make it big time doing that? And like the people in the writing group were like, is this a metaphor for writing in the furry fandom? And I was like, no, but maybe. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's about like you should be happy and successful. Anyway, the furry fandom, by the way, it was not intended to be that metaphorical, but for people who feel kind of stuck in a small part and want to break out. I actually feel like the furry fandom now obviously can support writers because it is supporting some writers.
Yes, I've seen numbers, by the way, and the book sales in furry fandom are not like you can do about as well selling books in the furry fandom as you can in mainstream sci-fi and fantasy.
And part of that is because from a financial standpoint, we've been having these discussions because a couple of our I have a novel that I'm sort of shopping around to some mainstreamy places, and one of our other friends has a novel that he's shopping around, and we've been having these discussions about, which would be better. Would it be better to be picked up by, say, Tor, which is always our example of a mainstream publisher, or would it be better to go to Fur Planet? And there's all these options on both sides. And maybe 10 years ago, you'd be like, of course you want to be picked up by Tor. Because Fur Planet doesn't exist, and so you're going to be published by an imaginary furry publisher. That's not going to make you any money. But now there's enough serious pros and cons to each one that it's really, really hard to make the decision. And when you look at the financials are not a slam dunk, by the way.
Yeah.
Because generally small presses in general, and definitely in furry, give you a better deal than you're going to get from a large publisher, one of the big five or one of the subsidiaries of the big five. And especially as it relates to ebooks, because the big five publishers, they're starting to come around a little bit, but the royalties that they give authors off of ebooks are border on criminal. But anyway, this is not the place for that. But the point is, furry fandom is definitely growing, and the people in the fandom are passionate about the fandom and furry literature, furry works, and furry creators.
We have better fans than mainstream
clearly.
Sci-fi fantasy. You guys are better. You support us more. When we release a book, we know releasing it to an audience that's interested as opposed to, maybe. You guys are awesome, and we love you, and that's why we release books to a targeted group, like with you guys, instead of trying to send it to Tor, some of these other groups. I'm not saying that I won't ever, because it's good to diversify, but
right. I mean, the idea is you want to get other people to also appreciate these books, and that's something that's sort of been like an undercurrent of furry fandom ever since I've been in it, which is many, many years. Anyway,
so
numbers. But one of the things about furry fandom is we kind of want to tell other people how cool it is, and there are ways to do that and ways not to do that, and we've seen a good measure of both. But I think that the literature that comes out of the furry fandom is a really good way to, and in certain cases, and obviously there's some things that are more specific to our fandom than to the mainstream, but I think there's a lot of stories that come out of the fandom that would be completely appropriate and appreciated by mainstream science fiction fans.
And I think furries sort of they stigmatize themselves more than they need to. Most of mainstream science fiction and fantasy are going to be cool with you guys. If you go to a con or whatever and you go oh yeah, I'm interested in this anthropomorphic stuff, it's not going to faze them. And that's one of the things that I wish furry would really understand is you're not as much of an outsider as you think you are.
Yeah, although I will say that the attitude that I'm encountering now in mainstream science fiction has moved from 10 years ago or 15 years ago, you would get, oh, you write furry stuff, and they would be all that's weird and I don't know what to do with it. And now they're hey, that's really cool.
I don't know how
That's
to sell
your
it.
thing.
Yeah.
I'm not interested. I'm not really interested in reading it. I don't know anyone who's going to sell it. But that said, we've gotten, myself and many other writers have gotten encouraging feedback from people in that industry about furry stories, where they'll write back and say, well, I don't want this, but the reason is not, oh, I don't like animal people stories. The reason is, this one isn't for me, or.
But mainstream science fiction and fantasy has gotten more open and more accepting, not just about different cultures and lifestyles and that sort of thing, but also about different ways that science fiction and fantasy is written, and furries are part of that. And we are more accepted than you guys think, and we're more welcome than you guys think. And I would really like to see a stronger presence at sci-fi fantasy cons. Like I went to Worldcon this year, and I was not. I'm really shy in general about the furry thing around most people, but I wasn't there. I would just talk about it, and nobody batted an eye. Like they were just like, "Oh, cool! Like let's talk about that." Like you are part of our group, and I think we are. Like we just don't know it yet, and that's really exciting, really encouraging, and I think there's room at the table for our cons, which are bigger than some of their cons. Most of their cons.
Yeah, I was going to say, their Worldcon is about comparable to Anthrocon at this point. Actually, Spokane's Worldcon was more comparable to Midwest Furfest. London had about 8,000 to 10,000 people, something like that. But that was like the biggest Worldcon ever. And also it was London, so it was an easiest flight for many American authors. It was an easy flight for every European author, and it was in the middle of London, so it was this great destination, and
kind of a drop-in con too. Like, oh hey, I'm one of like the 18 million people in London. Sure, I'll stop in with my friends. Yeah,
and London was a blast. I'll talk more about it at some other point.
Furry isn't as much of a redhead stepchild as it used to be perceived as, where you have, fandom, and then furry is down here in the corner.
Sorry, go ahead.
You're just trying to take this all back to your book, aren't you?
No. Go ahead.
I see what's
We're not
going
as much in the corner as we used to be. We're not at the bottom of the geek hierarchy anymore. Now that there's bronies.
Now that there's MRAs and gamergators and sad puppies and rabid puppies, like
but I don't even think they're in the geek hierarchy. I guess maybe they are.
They are, yeah.
All right. But anyway,
everybody's got a place along the ladder somewhere. But the anthropomorphics is such an added value to a lot of things. I mean, a lot of people write stories with furry characters because they love the ear communication, the tail communication, the hackles, the different species, where humans are boring compared to all these things, and they add the mythology, they add just a more an animal role playing, power struggles. And that also that floods over into. I mean, there's Jack and Daxter. There's video Star Fox over here. There's it infiltrates in so many different ways, and people are like, "Ew, furries," but then they're like, "Oh, Animaniacs," and it's like they share some commonalities.
I mean, we are an accepting community, and that's very valued now.
Yep.
In the light of all the like ugliness that's happened, like. The ability to identify with groups that are different, to pull people in instead of pushing them out, which is, I think, one of our strengths. That's very valued.
I was going to say if any furry would write a science fiction, like military science fiction rollicking space adventure story that reinforces the male patriarchy, you would have a built-in audience in the science fiction fandom.
John C. Wright would be like,
yeah. Oh yeah. And also if they're Christian, yeah. I read all of the Hugo nominees from the Sad Puppies, and that's a tale for another time. I was not impressed in general. Granted, that was not. I think a lot of the writing in the science fiction fandom, some of the more literary writing is really, really good and really complicated, and we don't really have a lot of people in the fandom doing that kind of thing. But so it's sort of skewed because you have the awards often at this point are prizing that literary, super deep, complex writing.
Sure.
But when you look at just the mainstream science fiction that's on the shelves, the stuff that's coming out of Furry, especially in the last few years, is completely on a par with whatever.
Agreed.
Whatever they have.
And I really encourage people, there is this extremely accessible science fiction and fantasy community out there on Facebook and Twitter, social media in general, that you can go out and you can follow people, and they will engage with you. They're happy to like have a conversation. If you're cool and not just like raving shithead, like they're interested.
You're already better than like
Yeah.
80% of Facebook in that case. So.
And you can participate. You can be part of this larger community, and it will be welcomed. And we don't.
Yeah. And along those lines, like also, it's good to support the furry community, of course, support furry writers and authors, buy our books, but
Especially mine.
but also read outside the community.
Yes,
so
definitely.
If you're following people and they're talking about this book or this story or whatever, go read it. Set aside some time to go read it. And because if you come in to engage in Facebook and the thing like being a raving lunatic or whatever, if you come into Facebook and your agenda is basically like, hey, I want to make people pay attention to this stuff over here, that's not going to get as much engagement as if they're talking about this story and then you go read the story and you say, oh, I have these ideas, and you engage with the story about those ideas, and then they start to have conversations with you and they say, oh, well, what else do you like? And then, once you're...
But connecting with that larger science fiction and fantasy community, it's not like way up there. It's down here, like, and you can be a part of it. Like, it's not huge. Like, there's this kind of impression that like, oh, I have to read like 800 people now, and it's like, no, like, it's in the dozens. Like, you can make connections with a few people, and they'll connect you with other people, and it is very positive. And they're interested. They're open for the most part. They're open and engaged people who are cool to have fans. Check out Angry Robot Publishing. Like, they're one of my new favorites. They have a few people they're publishing now, and like Wesley Chu, who they're publishing, was just this year's Campbell Award winner. There's great books out there. There's people doing exciting things and they're on our level. Like, you can enter this world so easily, and it's so rewarding, and you really should.
Yeah, and I think this whole there's a little bit of impatience to say, well, why don't they do the same thing for us? Why don't they come and look at our community? And they're kind of only aware of it peripherally, and that's why I think we're trying to get more furry writers to go to these, at least to the World Cons. We're trying to get more of a presence and make people more aware of it, so that eventually people become curious about these books and say, well, there's this community of thousands and tens of thousands of people who really like these books. Maybe I should pick one up and take a look at it. And I think in the next 5 to 10 years, some people in the community are going to start picking up these books and saying, hey, there's a few, we don't maybe necessarily, I mean, there's definitely people in the science fiction community who would want the BDSM collection. There's a science fiction erotica press that did I met the founder because I wrote a story for their press, and she started the press because she was like, I kind of like bondage, and I want to write a science fiction story with bondage. And she took her first story and made like photocopied pamphlets, stapled pamphlets of it, and went around conventions selling it for like $2, and that's how her press started. So
I would say that the flip side of this, though, is that the sci-fi fantasy community is not unaware of us. Like, there are Hugo Award winners who are friends with people in the furry community who know us well. I mean,
there are Hugo Award winners who are members of the furry community.
Yes, there are. Yes, Ursula, yes, and others like Kat Valenti knows furries, and she's been on this podcast.
Kat Valenti has been on this podcast. And Ursula Vernon has been on this podcast. I think we've had one other Hugo winner on the podcast. I can't remember who it was now, which sounds really bad. Like, I can't remember which Hugo Award winner was on the podcast.
Right. But I would say the flip side of this is that we're not amateurs anymore, and we can't act like it. Like, it's time. We are now ready to hold ourselves to higher standards, to work, to write, to criticize ourselves as if we are part of the mainstream, because we are. And Digger is Sofa Wolf, but Digger is also Hugo Award-winning strip, and we are closer to that mainstream than a lot of people think. And I think that in 10 years, there's going to be very little division between our communities, and we need to be ready for it. We need to work hard. We need to have professional standards for ourselves. We need to expect that. Yeah.
I think, yeah, this gets to a debate. I'll be interested to hear your views on it too, where there's a. I used to sort of we've tried to say, we've talked about like the stories that come up on So Furry, and there's a lot of levels of writing, and I think there's that what you're saying about professional standards and all is absolutely true for a subset of furry writers. And that is a subset that really want to be professional writers. There is another subset of furry writers who are very happy being amateur furry writers who want to just publish their stories on So Furry.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And they're just like, I like this story because I like the idea, and I'm just going to write it down for me and my friends, and if other people in furry really like it,
But that exists in mainstream science fiction and fantasy too.
It also does exist in mainstream.
I mean, they give Hugos for fan fiction writing, and for
well, yeah. But yeah, so I just want to say I don't disagree, but I want to also say there's room for all kinds of writing. And I had this discussion with Rob Baird, who was saying if you go by the people who upload to So Furry, there are literally thousands of writers in the furry fandom, and there's maybe what's the Furry Writers Guild membership now, like 100, 150, something like that. There's a small subset of them who want to take writing to the next step professionally and seriously, and to say, we want to just keep upping our game, basically. That's for, this group of writers that we belong to. It doesn't necessarily mean, well, we're going to start casting aside all of those people who just want to upload their things.
But again, mainstream science fiction fantasy doesn't do that. Like
Right.
they welcome their fan fiction writers, and they welcome their engagement with the community is always valued. I think with rare exceptions when someone is a toxic piece of shit, like
we're kind of fortunate in that we don't really have those kinds of people to that extent in our community.
we are in general a cooler community than the mainstream science fiction and fantasy.
We really kind of are. Anyway, I'm anxious to get your thoughts on it as well. As someone who tends to write, I mean, I know you can write really good, more mainstreamy stories when you want to, but a lot of your stuff tends to be more extreme and more out on the fringe. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Well, there really isn't much of an agenda behind that. That's just the stuff that comes into my head. Welcome to my psyche. I never intended to be popular or to get anything in a book, and like I said in another panel, I failed on both counts. I don't think anybody minds. But I do differ from a lot of the other writers, especially at this con, where I want to make my work the best, to lift it up as best as I can, and if I submit to a book and I get in it, cool. But I don't have the end goal of making it my day job. It's always been a fun thing. It's something that I'm really good at, and I'm proud of that. And I'm just having a lot of fun with it, as there's a day job and then there's a passion, and then there's a nice balance between that.
Again, I'm just going to point out, like, most mainstream science fiction and fantasy writers also have a day job. Like,
Yeah,
the
vast
distance
majority.
between us is not that large.
I've experienced a whole lot of people who their end goal is to make their fortune doing furry fiction. And enough said, yeah.
Should get a more realistic goal, like learning to fly.
And there's the idealism where do what you love and you'll never work a day in your whole life. And then there's the whole you can do your passion on the side where you have benefits at this job over here, work towards your retirement, but you can have all these great stories and you can still do it's there's discipline to it. You have there's time management. You can do this thing, and I get up at 3:00 in the morning and I'm writing at 5, from 5 to 8, and then I go to work, and that's where I get my writing done. that's just the way that I personally work. When everyone else is going to bed, I'm awake. But I don't know. I love that I'm at like 133 stories now.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Mad props, yo.
And considering that like 26 of those are published, that's a really good percentage of a total work. And I'm still blown away. I mean, I don't go around like gawking at my shelf full of books. I just got 2 at this con. I'm expecting a 3rd one, so I have like a 2nd shelf I got to do now. And it's just looking at that, it's like, cool, I did this thing. There's all these barcodes that I have to my name, and it's just you don't need them, but it's this great validation. Every human on the planet wants validation and to be told they're good. I liked what you did, and or I got off so hard.
Which is a you're looking for engagement with your writing, and that's a form of engagement.
Even more than that, I get I forgot to FAP. I have to go back a 2nd time just so I can get off. Thanks a lot, and I'm like, you're welcome.
I'll tell you a secret about writers' shelves. If you're not familiar with the term, like the writer's shelf, like writers have a shelf where all of the books that they've published or contributed to go, and so you're like, I have a full bookshelf. If you get one of those like IKEA shelves that's about that wide, you can have like 3 shelves in no time. And then you can be like, I've got 3 shelves of my books in my bookcase at home.
I should have specified the average dimensions of a shelf.
Right. One of the things that I think is really cool about the fandom is, I have people ask, somebody asked me this con how many books I have published, and I'm like, it depends what you define as a book. So like 20 maybe. Not Tubes has 4 books out now, and the fact that your writing is recognized for the quality that it has, even though, I shouldn't say even though, like in mainstream science fiction, the people that get on panels are often the people who have books out, who have books published, who are considered professional authors. And I think one of the cool things is that furry fandom recognizes that you write damn good stories, and you might not have like published 6 novels of your stories. You might be in collections here and there. And those kinds of people like sometimes do get noticed in the mainstream, but it's a lot harder to make a reputation on short stories in that world. But the fact that you're getting recognition by being on panels and by being consulted as one of the more eminent writers in the fandom, I think is really cool and well deserved, by the way.
Thank you. And that despite some of the content, that still blows me away, because I used to spend a lot of time just waiting for a shoe to drop, and that would be the end of it, and somebody would get a rager on for something or another. But the main thing is, these things come out of my head. They got to go on the page. It's called expiation. It happens to a lot of us, and I just want to make those the best I can, no matter what the subject matter is. I personally don't consider myself a shock writer, because there's been so much stuff that got into books. Despite the other stuff that I've done that never gets into books, everybody is just so accepting, and nobody's like, well, you've written this in the past, so I don't feel comfortable publishing your stuff. That just still never happened, and I just very lucky.
I liked something that Tyrion told me about the second Will of the Alpha book. Tyrion from Fur Planet. He said he specifically ordered the stories so that the mildest kinks were at the front and the sort of harshest were towards the back. And so he said now he tells people, at whatever point you feel uncomfortable, just stop reading, because it's not going to get any better. And I think it's cool. They're open to publishing a book like that and just saying, some people are going to like this and you might not. And so when you get to the point where you're like, this isn't for me anymore, that's the end of the book for you.
And what surprised me was that my story was second to last, and I didn't. I wasn't phoning it in, but I'd never done the stuff that I wrote in the story, and I just did a little bit of research, but I guess I was convincing enough that a lot of people who were into that particular stuff in the story appreciated it and could relate to it. But it never struck me as taboo or extreme. But knowing the stuff that I write, the stuff that I think is normal, everyone else thinks is extreme, and I've long since accepted that.
I think the whole like shocking and amusing letters from fans is probably a whole other Unsheathed episode that we should do sometime. But for now, unless you have closing remarks, we should probably get to taking some questions from people in the audience, because I told them they should ask questions, and we've rambled on for 45 minutes without letting them ask anything. So
I do have closing remarks based on things that you said, and it's like, if there's one thing that I wish that I could communicate to the furry fandom at large and like have it absorbed, it's that I think furry fandom has this real inferiority complex where we regard ourselves as kind of socially maladjusted in a way, or like there's always this stereotype about furry drama and like, oh, drama, like whatever furries, like we're not special in that way. Like, this is a human thing. Like, if you know human beings outside of our fandom, there's always drama. Like, it's part of who humans are.
Donald Trump right now.
There's not a way in which you're broken or which you're not contiguous with like the larger humanity. We're everything that you see.
Belong.
We belong. Everything that you see that you think is unique to our fandom is not. It's part of humanity.
Yeah.
We're all just part of this great mixed up like human race, and I know that saying that is slightly offensive to everyone because like, oh, humans, what? Like but no. We're not special in that way. We're special in some other ways.
Yes.
But
everyone is a special snowflake.
you don't have to feel like this thing that is part of our community is unusual, or I should be ashamed of it, or I have to self-deprecate so that people accept me. I see that a lot. People like slagging on furry so that they kind of seem like they can rise above it in a way. And it's like, no, this is human beings. This is who we are. We're all part of this. The things that you do and the things that happen in cons or between people living in the same household are the same as the larger world. I wish people could understand that and
yeah, we've said that. I know I've said that before on this podcast. It's where like if people ask you about the furry conventions and you're like, oh well, it's just like a science fiction thing and people are kind of like animals and they're like, oh, is that a furry con? Yeah, it's kind of, I guess, a furry con. I don't know. I just sort of go. It was like my friends are all into it, whatever. Then people are going to know. The people are going to get the impression that you are ashamed of it because you are ashamed of it. If you just go, yeah, it's a furry con. Some people dress up in costumes. I have a costume I dress up in sometimes, but I do it at the cons and I do it with my friends and it's fun. And that CSI episode was completely off base.
I'm going to give you guys a cool secret. I was talking to the staff at the Fairmont one time after further confusion, and it was like, so it's like our con, like, do you dread when we coming down? And like, oh no, what? You guys are fine. Like, you're a really, really well-behaved con. And I said, really? Like, so, like, what kind of conventions are bad? And he was like, dentists.
Yep. Yep. There was. So, God, Buck, were you at Furry Fiesta like number 2? I think that was the one where there was a dentist convention, like either just before or just after or contiguous with Fiesta. And yeah, the management there said the same thing. They were like, no, you guys were great. We had so many problems this weekend and it was all because of the dentist.
Yeah, they have so many drugs and they just like, they use them and they wreck their rooms and they like, it's terrible. Like,
and remember the Midwest Fur Fest when like, there were a bunch of prostitutes who heard that there was a convention at the convention center and all kind of came up to hang around outside and people went out and were like, yeah, you're probably not going to get much business here at this. And they were like, oh, okay. And I mean, but that's standard at other conventions. Is like a lot of bad behavior, and
So-
we're good.
I encourage you all the next time that you go to a dentist, like when you're there.
Ask them for drugs.
Yeah, no. I'm just saying, like, as much as you can with 18 different things in your mouth, smirk a little bit because you're better than them.
Okay, let's we have a microphone serval. Thank you for your help today. We have some questions from the audience. So introduce yourself and state
I just
your
have
question.
two things. Hi, I'm Reachin.
Hi.
I have two things. First of all, there's a tweet that's going around the fandom on Twitter, and it's someone saying, I've made fun of furries for 15 years, and I want to apologize. Compared to the current internet, you guys are the new normal. And the other thing is that 30 years ago, the people that were the fandom now were the Trekkies, and you would have a Trekkie con, and people would see them, and they would smirk. And you know what? The Trekkies' response to that was, fuck you, I'm gonna go watch Star Trek and dress up like a Klingon. And you know, now that's considered completely normal. Now there are people in the lobby who are smirking at us, and the business people are like, but in 30 years, this isn't gonna be a blip because there's gonna be something way weirder in 30 years, and we're just gonna be on sitcoms.
We are by the way already on sitcoms. I can at least rattle off the Drew Carey Show, 30 Rock. What else?
Emmanuel goes to dinosaur land.
Wow, I don't remember that
Our
one.
word for sex is yiffing.
Oh my, yeah. Oh God, 30 Rock.
30 rock.
30 Rock was so good.
I'm used to having to explain to at least 2 or 3 people every con what the thing is in different forms, whether or not depending on how disgusted they look or going around it. But 2 notable things that happened to me this con was checking into the Red Roof, which is like 3 blocks north of here, and I guess there's mostly furries in it. But the lady, after she checked us in, she was like, "So you guys in town for the convention?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Okay, well, after when you're checking out from the convention, can I have your FA pages?" And I'm like,
No, you may not.
"You have my credit card, ma'am." You know. And then the second one was last night after we all got done with the coffee clutch and everything. I was gonna go do some hot tubbing. Didn't have my swimsuit, and so I didn't want to. I wasn't in any shape to walk to the Red Roof, so I just took a little Uber. And the guy in the Uber knew exactly what was going on. He was probably ferrying people, left and right. And in the 3 or so blocks it took to get there, we already established, yeah, it's a con. Oh, that's pretty cool. I should drop in sometime. What do you do? I'm a writer. Oh, that's awesome. What do you do? Short fiction. Thanks for writing with me. And there was no explanation. It was just here. This thing is here. The people who live around these places and live around, San Jose, and they have. I mean, Iguanas has discounts for furries, and there's Fernando's.
Yeah.
That it's all over the place.
And the the most recent poster for Zootopia to come out has all kinds of amazing brand name animal puns in it that could be taken from any number of furry books that I've read, which is hysterical.
Director is a furry. Like, straight up, he's just a furry. Like,
I definitely think Zootopia is going to at least bring more people into the fandom.
it's our movie. It really is.
I'm at this point. It could be like a shitty movie, and I don't care. I'll watch it with the sound off because the fox is going to be cute.
The character design and animation is so good.
It really is.
It's so good. He keeps using them as stickers in Snapchat or in a Telegram just
I know.
to annoy me.
There's a whole
because
Nick Wilde
I
sticker
hate
set in
stickers,
Telegram,
but-
and it's like those are my expressions, so I just keep using them. But the point is, Zootopia has all these things, and I think one of the sort of underrated ways in which the mainstream has figured out to connect with the furry fandom is through terrible animal puns, because everybody gets that, and people are like, it's it's really terrifying how people in like the mainstream areas around have figured out that you can just stick fur into words and make a terrible pun, and furries will love you for it.
I will not. I will shoot you.
But it's cute when mainstream people do it. When
I'll shoot
furries
them,
do
too.
it, it's when furries do it, we're all just like, oh my god, no. But yeah, the like store owners and people have figured this out. Like Fernando's at near Anthracon serves like special meals in dog bowls to people.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, they have plastic dog bowls that they give out to people.
I don't
And
have a gun,
everyone-
but I have mind bullets.
and the lines for them are out the door. It's amazing, and I think that's so cool because it's like, look, we don't necessarily want to be in your home, but we want to play with you outside. That's cool. So it's really encouraging.
Dog park.
So you, oh, absolutely.
Oh, definitely it's going to. Like, I pity the children who watch this movie and are shaped by
For
it.
God's sake, they had him zip up his pants in the trailer.
If you're 9 years
What
old
the
and you're
hell?
watching this movie, it's over for you.
Yeah.
Like,
It's the Disney afternoon all over again.
Yo, please state your name and your question, and thank you for your patience.
it's Georges Quares.
Yes, indeed it is Ryan. Hi, I'm George Squares, and I'm in both of the anthologies that Whyte Yote is in. So
Congratulations.
please read those. And yeah, I'm also near the back at the Will of the Alpha too. So yeah,
So you're a horrible, horrible person, is what you're
No.
saying. Okay.
side eye. But but yeah, well, I think it's cool that you talked about how furries have become more mainstream. When I could say, oh,
Little
God.
closer.
This is complicated. I'm
Little-
sorry.
You look like you look
Now
like
smell it a little.
you look like you're demonstrating some futuristic dental which really makes me want to ask the serval to check you for drugs now.
Gently baste your tonsils, if you would.
Just move it back and forth in front of your teeth and let the medical X-rays soothe away the plaque.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, but no. Yeah. Like I was saying, furry has been in mainstream for a while for like video
He's
games.
going
too.
red.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
We're just narrating because this visual humor will be completely lost on the people listening to the podcast
They're
later.
not gonna. No one's gonna get this, and it's okay.
Well, that's why we're narrating it.
Okay. But yeah, I can think of several modern video games coming out soon, like Scott Benson's Night in the Woods, which is going to be released on PlayStation 4. That has primarily anthro characters. It's
Oh my God, is that the one with the donuts, wolf donut?
Donut wolf?
Yeah,
Yeah.
donut wolf. Yeah.
And don't forget the recently released Undertale.
Oh yeah, that which actually
Yes.
no. One of the secret
Yeah.
bosses is someone's persona, which is furries are here. They've been here. Armello raised $500,000 like in their Kickstarter, and that was like this is our 2-month goal, and we kind of really want to do it, and it's like, oh, you hit it in 1 month. So yeah, there's a market for it, and they're here. We've been here. Hi.
And
You
I
may
do
already
think,
be used to it.
Yeah.
and I do think people are realizing that. And I think this is when we talk about when we talk about getting into the mainstream, when we're talking about mainstream science fiction, amusingly, the science fiction community can often be a little bit behind the times. Like in terms of, it was just this year that the Science Fiction Writers Association decided that, hey, if you've self-published a book or have got a book out with a small press that made the same amount of money as an advance you would have gotten from a publisher, then maybe you should be also allowed to join our organization.
But that whole thing was like pushed super strongly by Maggie.
By Maggie, who's one
Maggie
of,
Hogarth, who is one of us.
Who is one of
us.
And it took, but at the same time, it took her 2 years to do.
And by the way,
So-
Maggie is on the Furry Writers Guild frequently in the
Yeah,
chat box.
she
You can
is.
talk
She is.
to her.
She's
Yes.
also the vice president of SIFWA right now.
Yeah.
The vice president of the Science Fiction Writers of America hangs out in our guild's chat room on a weekly basis.
And participates.
Yes.
And is really cool to talk to.
Yes.
But
So I'm sorry.
but anyway, my point
yes.
is acceptance in the mainstream, in the outer mainstream, might actually come a little faster than in the science fiction community because just people go glom onto things in pop culture that they find, and Zootopia is going to accelerate that, of course. And just anytime someone like Disney makes a big property,
Oh, there's more than one.
yeah, no, absolutely
There's
for
so
sure.
many.
I know 4 mascots right now active, and 2 other relatives actually who work at Disneyland. So I mean, that's an indication.
Deedless.
Hi. Okay, I'm Daedalus, or Kilted Jackalope. First off, I wanted to start off by just saying thank you to all 3 of you for what you do for the fandom, for showing up here tonight,
Aw,
for
thank
entertaining
you.
us, and for giving back so much that we enjoy reading from all of you and taking the time to just sit with your fans and go back and forth with us. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. The question I have for you is, you're all 3 accomplished writers and you're all very talented. You could write in any genre or any form you wanted to, and I think you would be successful. What is it about the furry characters, the anthropomorphic characters, what does that bring to your stories that you don't get anywhere else? Why do it that way?
That's a really good question.
Do you have a ready answer, or
It kind of comes from everywhere. Sometimes I want to write a story to pair up a couple of characters and reverse the predator-prey thing by virtue of some kind of sexual angle, or sometimes it's basically like Circles, where you just have furry humans and it doesn't factor in that much. I personally find it a lot more interesting when you can express emotions and relationships through the ears positions, the tail positions, the fur haggles, rising, snarling, and especially with there's a lot of scent play that you can do, and it just there's so much more engagement, at least for me, than just writing humans into those stories. And a lot of the times they need to be furry just because that's just the way that this story is going. But even if they're not furry, there's so much more information you can give to a reader by engaging all those other physical aspects.
you can go next if you're not
can
ready
you
yet.
go? No, I'm ready, but I kind of want to leave it because mine's kind of heavy. So
Oh, okay. I don't know. There's a number of levels on which I can answer that, and because I've been asking myself that question. If you go look at the foreword of my first published novel, the foreword is all about basically me asking myself, if you're going to write 250,000 words, why would you choose to do it in gay furry erotica? And sometimes the answer is just that you don't have a choice, that's how your brain works. Another level is, as Whyte said before, there's no plan to it. It's just that's what happens. There's on another level, it's basically just I like those characters, and that's an answer that has a long history back through from, for me when I saw Disney's Robin Hood, and had. In those days, we didn't have VHS tapes. We had records that we would play that had the soundtrack of the movie, and I played that thing until it was grooved right through, to the point where, and I played, I don't know, played it for a few years, I forgot about it, and like years and years and years later, when the videotape came out, I still knew half the lines to the movie because I had them burned into my memory from listening to that record over and over again. And so I sat there and I was like, hey, let's rent Robin Hood. I haven't seen that in like 20 years. And popped it in, and I was like, his you deliberately dodged. I was like, I still know all of these lines. So part of it was that, having had that aesthetic and having seen a story in it and just thinking, man, that's cool, and I like that. I like that. And then there's another level whereby, as a writer, I try to write stories that justify the things that I want to write anyway. So furries are great for doing things. I love all the different body expressions, like Whyte said, ears and tails and stuff. And I find now that when I write human characters, I get it's like a completely different mindset. And I never find myself accidentally saying, well, Joe perked his ears because he's human, and he's human, and he occupies a different slot in my mind, and my writing is actually different when I'm writing human characters, which is weird. And I feel much more at home and comfortable in the furry worlds, which is a little odd also. But so I try to find stories that justify writing the furry characters, and so you look at things like people who feel out of place and people who are going against type, and you can do that with species. I'm a fox, I'm supposed to be cunning, and I just want to be honest and pay for everything, and not I just want people to like me. I don't want to trick them, but then you're not being a good fox. Or I'm a tiger and I'm supposed to be tough and manly and stuff, but also I'm gay, and that's the perception is at odds with reality. And having all of those stereotypes and cultural background things built into the different species, I think really is really fun for me in stories, and just exploring like a little bit how the world would be different is something that I enjoy. I think mostly it just comes down to I've enjoyed doing it so much that, man, I feel so comfortable now in those worlds.
So first of all, I do perk my ears when people say something interesting. It looks like this. I do wiggle my nose when something's interesting. It's like that. But for me, so humanity is this strange state where we regard ourselves as not animals, where we have this impression that we have free will and that we can rise above what the animal state is, that we can control ourselves. And meanwhile, there are all these urges and desires and hungers beneath the surface. And like with furries, that's all those hungers and desires and urges are permitted. You can be like horny and express it, or hungry and express it, or whatever else. Like the movements of your ears or the wag of a tail shows who you really are. And we are those things as humans or as furries. We still feel all those things. We still want to express them, but we're expected to control them and hide them and push them behind this behind civility and civilization. But with furry, you don't have to do that. Like you can have all these appetites. You can have your id. You can have your desire, and that's okay. So for me, furry is forgiveness in a way. It's permission. It's allowing you not just to be human, to be an animal. But we are all animals. Like, no matter what we look like on the outside, we are all animals. And all these things that we feel and want to act on and like that motivate us through life that we're supposed to hide and suppress and control and have self-discipline about, they're all okay. They're permitted. That's what I love about furry, is that you're allowed. Like, it can come out, and there's this honesty to it that doesn't exist all the time in human civilized society. So that's what I love about furry, and that's why I try to write it, because to me, it's compassion, not just for the animal state, but for the human condition as part of the animal state. That we are allowed to be who we are. We're allowed to want what we want and show it and not feel ashamed or embarrassed that those things exist. And if we are ashamed or embarrassed, it's super cute, yo. So... So for me, that's why.
Good question, by the way, and good answer there. Yeah, and I think from the I don't know. Do we have more questions? I'm not going to add to that. I think I should just let that one sit. Up front.
I'm Derelix, and not exactly a question, more of a statement. Earlier, Ryan, you said furry's not. Ryan, you said furries are not exactly at the bottom of the chart of the outcast chart anymore. You mentioned bronies.
Technically, I mentioned bronies.
Yeah. Okay. So I resent that.
It was a joke.
Yeah.
We actually, the thing that we sort of tangentially refer to all the time is that the geek hierarchy that the Brunching Shuttlecocks made, I don't know, a million years ago now, where like he had all his arrows being, at least we're not this one, and like furries were near the bottom, and then there was the bottom
Furries
one
who write
was-
Star Trek fan fiction.
The bottom one was people who write Star Trek erotic fan fiction and like Kirk is an ocelot or something. But yes, thank you for the laughter at their joke. But we sort of added to it a little while ago, and what we actually did was we put furries and bronies, and it was like a double-sided arrow between them, because each of those groups is like, well, at least I'm not that group, and then both of them had a down arrow to furry bronies.
Bronies, I do not love your show. I've watched it a few times. It is not for me. But I am happy that you love something.
Yep.
And loving something is never wrong. Like, if you...
Well,
well,
sometimes it's against the law, though.
methods of expressing that love are sometimes wrong. But loving something, love, true love, is if you enjoy it, I'm happy for you. I cannot always share in that enjoyment and love, but I'm happy for you, and it's
No,
it's-
I've been sort of tangentially at a BronyCon to specifically just to meet friends. No, I've watched like half of an episode or something, and it's fine.
I gave it 5.
Yeah.
Half of an episode? That doesn't mean nothing. You have to watch at least the first 2.
My husband watched a bunch of them for me, so. But no, the people at the BronyCons were very, very nice. Everyone was great. It's definitely, it's mostly when we say, haha, we make fun of bronies now, it's sort of an ironic gesture, like, because if anyone, we should not be the ones saying, now we have someone to make fun of.
We know we're the same. Yeah.
And in fact, BronyCon in Baltimore was the largest anthropomorphic enthusiast convention, so it's bigger than Anthrocon. So, more. Do we have more questions for?
Hi,
Who are you?
Who are you?
I'm some cool guy,
Oh, it's true.
Yeah, that's actually my handle. I'm some cool guy on Twitter. No,
I remember when you killed vampires that time.
my name is Jacoby. I had a quick question. Not too, but I hear that your husband is really amazing. What's your
What he
favorite?
does best is ask questions that impress everyone in the room. So I'm really looking forward to improving that.
Wow. No pressure. No, so one of the things that I had a question about was Kyell. Everyone's pretty much familiar with your work, but for NotTube and Whyte Yote, Whyte Yote or Whyte Yote.
Yote, the accent's pretentious.
Okay.
I keep imagining him, whenever I see the accent on his name, I keep imagining him as a Buckaroo Banzai character going, Whyte Yote, Whyte Yote.
So, what stories, like maybe online or in print, that you guys would recommend for a new reader who might not be aware of you, and this is a good introduction to the kind of stuff that I write?
I don't know if there's an introductory point to my stuff. It's all over.
Everything's the deep end.
It's all 12 feet down, you know?
Is your X story online anywhere?
Yeah.
Did you post it?
Yeah, it's been online now.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would probably be a good one.
I think that's a fairly good starting point. It's aged very well. I'm happy about that. And I'd probably go through my list of published things and find the more, I guess, the more general interest kind of stuff away from the Will of the Alpha and the other things. The X is a good starting point, and maybe Fang 1, 2. Well, maybe not Fang 1. That's yeah. Well, X. The story's called De et Machinae. It's Latin. Machinae. Sorry, and God and Machine. There is some cybernetics going on. There's some religion in there. Some finding oneself and loss. And it's people still come to me, and it's a pretty strong impact.
Yeah,
and
I've heard a lot of people talk about that story to me. And they're like, oh, this moved me so hard. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm still impressed with that many years later, and I take partial credit for putting together the anthology that made you write it, but man, you knocked that one out of the park.
And that was like the first time that it occurred to me that, wow, I'm really good at this. Like when you told me that that you thought that, I think that year was the Ursa Major Awards, and both of our stories were up there, and you told me that you thought that I should have won. That was like, well, shit. I mean, this is a thing now. I can't have that imposter syndrome going on anymore. Like I've tried to fight down all the time, and yeah, I mean, this was not a blip, and it Fang 1 and 2, 3, and it kept going on, and I don't know. Basically, my philosophy is I just keep doing stuff, and I throw it to the wall, and if it sticks, it sticks, and I just I'll keep on trying to do the thing that I've been doing.
I have a confession, which is I've been pretending to have imposter syndrome this whole time.
See, I was just going to say I'm always worried that people will discover I don't actually have imposter syndrome. I was trying to do your joke for you. How about a starting point for you?
I mean, I would hope that people would read God of Clay. You can do it for $2 for through the end of the month on Kindle or ebook. But that's.
I think everyone should read God of Clay. Everyone.
All right, I'll read it. God. Stop hassling me.
Especially Jacoby.
Yeah.
I'm picking on him now because he doesn't have the microphone anymore.
Like, as much as anything I've written, that's the song of my soul. So I would like people to read that.
Cool. Do you have anything online that people could get for free and read?
Yes. If you search for it, and if you can't find it, hit me up on Twitter, NotTube, and let me know. But there's a story called The Non-Biodegradable Fox.
Oh, I like that one.
Which is the story of, appeared in, I think, the first New Fables.
Yep.
And it's the story of a taxidermist having a conversation with the dead fox that he is stuffing. Not that way, you pervs.
Okay. One more question. If it's a quick one. Everybody knows where to find my stuff. Go to kyellgold.com. I don't know. I point people at Green Fairy because it's all ages, sort of PG-13ish, and it's easy and accessible. But mostly when people say, where should I start with your work, there has to be a long question and answer about what kind of stories do you like and what
Yeah,
are you
they're all
up for
different,
reading.
like-
And yeah, I jump around so much with different things. Like I've written an Agatha Christie murder mystery, and if you want something with a lot of gay
You
sex
mean
in it, I have a
Fagatha
couple of those. If you want something that's like a farce, or if you want something that's romance, so whatever, I don't know. If people want to read my stuff, go to my website, kyellgold.com, and under the books link, I have like blurbs of all the books that just go through them. You can go find samples on Amazon's Kindle store and read things. You can download my gold standard
This
free
sounds
sampler.
like the
and
disclaimer for a drug
blah,
commercial
blah,
at
blah.
this point.
Yes, and
Kyell Gold stories may cost.
warning, if you get an erection lasting more than 36 hours, please call a doctor.
Less major bleeding than other porn.
Okay, one more, hopefully quick.
Okay, recently, this is Reachin', and recently there's been a discussion in the fandom about reviews and things like that, and you posted a blog post and you said the best thing that you can do is make recommendations to your friends about the things that you have read that you enjoy. Now, you guys just got finished plugging some of your stuff, so I would like you to plug someone else's stuff with the caveat they cannot be in a relationship with you or related to you. Who would you suggest other people read?
Do you count professional relationships?
No.
Okay.
And you can't be on the table either.
I'm not on the table, I'm behind it. So the most recent winner of the Best Novel Coyote Award was Rukus's Off the Beaten Path. I wrote a review of her book Heretic a while ago. Off the Beaten Path is the first book in a trilogy, which is really good for a number of reasons. She does great characters. She does a great job of things that people talk about in science fiction circles as far as expanding the world, expanding the stakes, expanding the plot, keeping the plot moving. From a technical standpoint, there are a few things in the prose where, if you're looking for things to hold you up, they might hold you up. But if you just lose yourself in the story and plot, that trilogy is really good. That's my recommendation.
I'm still thinking.
Okay, so free confession, I'm not reading a lot of free literature this time. I'm trying to catch up with some of my peers in the mainstream science fiction and fantasy community. I have people that I went to Clarion with that I would recommend. Nino Cipri, for example, and Haralambi Markov.
You might want to spell those.
Okay, easier is the name, their works, which is The Shape of My Name and The Language of Knives. They're both great, and
that was our warning, I think. But
I'm reading a lot of up and comers in that community, such as Wesley Chu and Ramez Nam, and there's always Chuck Wendig, who did the recent Star Wars novel Aftermath. You can't go too wrong with that. But whenever anyone asks me about that, I think of Ratatouille, which you have, which I think you know that movie, and I don't know if you enjoyed it or not. But
a little story about cooking that takes place in Paris with a furry character. Yeah, maybe. might have seen it once or 13 times.
But there's a comment about criticism in it, which I think about every month or so, and I love. And if it's okay with you, I'll read again because yeah. So this is the critic Anton Ego, his criticism of the restaurant, which he knows is run by a rat, at the end of the movie, and he says, "In many ways, the work of a critic is easy. We risk very little, yet enjoy a position over those who offer up their work and themselves to our judgment. We thrive on negative criticism, which is fun to write and fun to read. But the bitter truth we critics must face is that in the grand scheme of things, the average piece of junk is probably more meaningful than our criticism designating it so. But there are times when a critic truly risks something, and that is in the discovery and the defense of the new. The world is often unkind to new talent, new creation. The new needs friends. Last night, I experienced something new, an extraordinary meal from a singularly unexpected source. To say that both the meal and its maker have challenged my preconceptions about fine cooking is a gross understatement. They have rocked me to my core. In the past, I have made no secret of my disdain for Chef Gusteau's famous motto, "Anyone can cook," but I realize only now do I truly understand what he meant. Not everyone can become a great cook, but a great artist can come from anywhere. And with that, I challenge you all to go out and find people that you love and defend the new and be a friend to the new and share it with the world.
We should probably have ended with that, but Whyte Yote also now has to make some. Do you have recommendations yet? That was lovely, by the way.
I can't recommend my boyfriend, I guess, but I'm going.
Yes, you may.
You should.
I want to.
Yes.
I will, because he has also
I'll
been.
second his recommendation, so it's not. So it's not just like boyfriend glasses.
We keep each other's stuff in check. We find the stuff that, upon the first reading, that you can read something and read it again and read it again, and then you read it with him in the room, and all of a sudden, oh, I didn't see any of this stuff because you're biased to your own work. But he's been in Heat and a couple of Fangs, and also in the Will of the Alpha 2, and a couple other things that I wasn't able to get in for different reasons. But
I would like to point out that the story that I remember of his most was in the anthology Plowed, which you were also in, and your two stories were two of the better parts of that anthology for me. Not to offend anyone else who had a story in there, but I thought your story specifically, as Ryan was saying, took a lot of chances and went places that it didn't need to go and wasn't expected to go, and pulled it off very well. And Tim's story also surprised me with where he went with his story. So,
it's his author name is Tim Green, Greene, Fatym. It's Tym Green, and my FA is just Whyte Yote on FA. All four of those websites. It's basically the same caps lock notwithstanding. If I had to recommend two other people, right at the top of my head, Hawkwolf came to my mind first, because there are not a whole lot of stories that leave a lasting impact on me emotionally, and his story in Will of the Alpha 1 was the one after mine. So that's an indication of how gritty, and the concept was so. I wish I could have done that or thought of that first, and he did it so well. It's immediate. It is in your face, and it's very very vivid, and you just feel the thing all the way through. And if I had to recommend someone else, I would recommend Candrel, specifically On the Bright Beach. It's a nice take on like augmented reality, or relationships across distances and perception, and also one of those things I wish I could have thought first if all these other things weren't in my head. But I don't really often finish a story and I'm like, wow, cool, that happened. But those were two particular memories, and so I just want to pass that along.
Cool.
For those guys.
Since I went first, I'm gonna toss two more names out that I thought of. One from the science fiction community, Sophia Samatar. Sophia with an F, Samatar with all A's, is terrific. She was nominated for a Hugo, I think, for her story "Selkie Stories Are for Losers," which is which is amazing. Her story in the anthology Kaleidoscope, which I was published in, was my favorite story in that anthology, and it was one of those that like your thing, you read through the story. The story's called Watchdog, and you just read through it, and at the beginning you're like, where is this? Like, oh, and it's so gorgeous all the way through. And in the furry fandom, Rob Baird publishes mostly on So Furry these days. He's an excellent writer. I admit I've read only a few of his stories, but his concept and the way he challenges status quo and just thinks about everything makes him really engaging to talk to, and I think more people should read his stuff, including me. So we're going to close it down there. Thank you guys so much for coming out here on a Saturday night. Thank you, RainFurrest, and thank you, RainFurrest, for scheduling this at 8 o'clock instead of 10 o'clock, so there's still time for people to go dancing tonight.
And drinking.
And drinking. Let's see. Thank you to Buck for providing the technical expertise and the equipment and the time.
Yes, thank you so much.
Without whom this podcast literally could not have happened. And thank you to Whyte Yote for agreeing to sit here with us and yammer into a microphone. Thank you, as always, to my eloquent and lovely co-host, Not Tube.
And thank you to my eloquent and handsome co-host.
This is our podcast. We hope that you will be back next year and look forward to seeing you guys then. Thank you all so much.